What are some of the things that we look for in recruiting new talent? What's some advice that you could give someone?
You never know who is working in the industry or who might be connected with who, so always be kind and gracious in those environments, because I think those impressions kind of go a long way, and it's a small community and network, and you want to make sure that you have a really positive presence.
Joining us in the studio today is a professional level cyclocross, gravel, and mountain bike racer. By day, she's a corporate recruiter, and after hours, she's a podium seeker. She's also a wife and dog mom. Please welcome Caitlin Bernstein. Caitlin, hi.
Hi, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. It's starting to warm up a little bit. Nice sunny day outside, so just doing some work and looking forward to getting a ride in this afternoon.
Caitlin, where are you calling in from in the world today?
I am calling in from Reno, Nevada.
And rumor has it you're kind of bi-coastal, right? You spend some time in two different cities, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I moved out west, out to this area after college. But starting in 2020, when all the work went remote, I started going back to Vermont for the summer, and then ended up staying through the fall because of cyclocross, and then continued to do that for the past 3 years. So been spending summer and fall in Vermont and a little bit into winter, and then coming back out west to Reno to enjoy some sunshine. And usually winter riding is available here. This winter has been a bit different. There's a lot of snow still, which is unusual for us here. But yeah, I've been spending time in Reno and Vermont, which is where I grew up. But I have actually committed and decided after 3 years of back and forth that I'll be moving back to Vermont full time this summer.
Beautiful place in the world.
It is.
My first real question was going to be, where were you born? So were you born in Vermont?
I was born in Vermont, yep.
And what did your parents do growing up?
Yeah, so my dad was a photographer. He first worked for a while for Ski Racing magazine and traveled a lot and followed the World Cup a bit and went to some Olympics to photograph ski racing. And my mom was a teacher for a while, and she eventually quit her job in teaching and helped start a photography business with my dad. So they did a lot of local marketing for Vermont companies and ski resorts, and then also got into the wedding photography business. Vermont is a beautiful place to get married, so they did a lot of weddings together, photographing there.
Did they shoot your wedding?
So they did not, and the reason for that is we decided to kind of elope. We did have about 10 friends, but we skied out here in the Tahoe area. We skied up to a ski hut and got married in a backcountry ski hut in a snowstorm. So unfortunately, the family wasn't there, but one of our friends took photos. So we do have some great photos from that.
Wow, married in a snowstorm. Caitlin, back to your childhood, what kind of activities were you into as a kid?
Yeah, so skiing was huge for me. I think I started skiing basically as soon as I could walk. And there's not a lot else to do in Vermont in the winter. It's very cold, very snowy. So I just loved to ski, mostly downhill skiing. That was my first love. And my parents let me join the ski program at the mountain. And eventually, I think when I was 5 or 6 already, I started ski racing.
What's your local mountain?
Sugarbush. So I grew up skiing at Sugarbush.
Did you ever think you would go pro and go to the Olympics?
Yeah, that was definitely the dream for a long time. Peekaboo Street was my childhood hero, and I definitely took kind of started on that path, and like went away to a ski academy, to Burke Mountain Academy, starting in 8th grade, and really just to pursue that dream. And I was on a good path, and having a lot of success as a young ski racer, having a lot of fun traveling the world, and racing everywhere, and unfortunately started to experience a lot of injuries. So as everybody knows, alpine ski racing is a very dangerous sport. And unfortunately, I'd already had 4 knee surgeries by the end of high school.
Wow.
Yeah. So I kind of had to take a hard look at that, and luckily had some really good guidance from my support network, and made the decision to end that pursuit, which I think ultimately like saved me now, and I'm able to still be an active adult and athlete. I think if I had stayed on that path, I would not be able to do a lot of what I'm doing now. So
Wow. 4 knee surgeries by high school. Is that what you said?
yeah.
Caitlin, was it then that you discovered the bike, or were you always a cyclist, or when did the bike come into your life?
Yeah, so I think that happened kind of like there was like the bike, and then bike racing kind of happened at different times for me, but the bike was always there, and always something that I did growing up, with my family. So my dad was into mountain biking, and he did a good amount of racing, as well. And so we, as kids, learned to mountain bike very early. When we went on family vacations, there were always bikes involved. And it took me a while before I really appreciated it, honestly. I think when I was growing up, I didn't have as much appreciation for going out in the woods with my family, and wanted to do more like normal kid vacation things. Like, I
Sure.
don't know, going to Disneyland or something. But now I have so much appreciation for having learned how to mountain bike at a young age. And just being able to having spent all that time outside, with my family. So that was definitely a special part of growing up, even if it took me a while to realize it. um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, I did like dabble in mountain bike racing growing up a bit. Like I would go to some races with my dad, but none of my friends did it. And when I would go to races, there weren't any other girls my age. Mountain biking wasn't nearly kind of as popular as it is now. And so it wasn't, I think, as engaging as ski racing, where I had a lot of peers, to compete with and to be friends with, honestly. So that kind of
Yeah.
fizzled out, and ski racing took over for a while.
I feel like ski racing, for as long as I can remember, always had a legitimate women's division in most every category, but not so much with bike racing, right? It was always the guys. I'm sure you saw that. Was there a time or a place where you saw the shift? Because I feel like today, while it might not be equal, there is definitely near parity with men's and women in cycling competition.
Yeah, definitely. I think it has changed a lot. And it was interesting for me having that perspective, from when I was younger, growing up and just going to races and not seeing any other girls my age. There were a few women, but like the women's categories were so small, and it was very male dominated. And that's one of the reasons that I was not engaged, and interested in pursuing the sport more, to be honest. And then when I kind of came back to cycling and got into bike racing later, it was clear that things were different, and that was really exciting. And around that time is when I saw, like, I first saw things like Little Bellas, and I actually became a mentor in Marin, and like that was so cool to see all these young girls just excited about mountain bikes. And um, that was really special to kind of come back to the sport and be like, wow, things have changed.
You mentioned Peekaboo Street as someone you admired as a ski racer. Were there people similar in the cycling world, whether it be, Leah Davison or others that you admired at the time that you sort of like, wow, I want to be like them, or people that you followed?
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned Leah Davison as a fellow Vermonter and also somebody who came from a ski racing background, like definitely somebody I've always admired and looked up to. And it's cool now to be in races with her as a competitor. That's not something I ever saw when I was younger. And I would say similarly, like there are so many women that I look up to in cycling. It's really powerful to watch all of the racing across all the disciplines and just see how much the sport has grown. But I think the kind of people that I'm most inspired by are the ones that I've gotten to know and gotten to ride with. Folks like Katarina Nash and Magali Rochette, who I've become friends with. And those are folks who, when I started racing, just thought they were so incredible and really admired what they were doing. And then having the opportunity to race with them, to train with them, and get to know them as friends has been a really cool experience. And just even though they're friends, like I still look up to them so much.
Please tell me you're friends with Leah.
Yeah. Yeah, we are friends. We haven't like crossed paths as much as I would like, honestly. Like, I'm hoping that when I move back to Vermont, we can actually go on more rides. But definitely somebody who I really admire and is just such a positive presence in the sport.
Caitlin, let's switch over to university. What did you study in school?
Yeah, so I went to the University of Vermont and I studied elementary education. So I definitely thought I was going to be an elementary school teacher, and I so far have not used that degree, but maybe someday.
It's there. It's there for you anytime, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, upon graduation, is that what you thought you would do? You would maybe race your bike and be a teacher?
Yeah, so that is about the time that I started getting back on the bike and getting into racing, really. I actually took a job at a ski academy in California, so in the Tahoe area after college. And it wasn't teaching, but it was coaching ski racers and working in admissions and being a dorm parent, so kind of the whole package. And
Yeah.
I was really excited to move to Tahoe and enjoy the sunshine and be able to ski and mountain bike out there. So that's kind of what got me out west initially.
What's your favorite mountain in the Tahoe area? Because there are many to ski at. And then what's your favorite mountain in the Tahoe area to bike at?
Yeah, that's a good question. The job I took was at Sugar Bowl Academy. So I would have to say I'm partial to Sugar Bowl, which is
Yeah.
one of the smaller mountains, but it just has a lot of charm. It has great terrain without all of the lift lines. And similarly, there is a trail, a mountain bike trail that I really love that starts near Sugar Bowl up on Donner Summit, which is called Hole in the Ground. And it's a really cool, I think, like 20-mile or so loop that has a lot of really technical terrain. And it's really just like a lot of natural rock features and it's super beautiful. So that would have to be my favorite.
Caitlin, how'd you get into the recruiting business?
Yeah, so I stumbled into the recruiting business, to be honest. I After working at Sugar Bowl, my husband and I decided to move to the Bay Area to explore work opportunities. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I started applying to different companies and just looking for openings where I could get a foot in the door. And Strava had an opening for somebody to be at the front desk, essentially. And I was like, well, I can do that. um, and it was not a dream job, but it was an opportunity to get into a really cool company. And I knew some folks there, and they kind of helped me get an interview. And I landed that job, and pretty quickly from there was like, okay, what do I like doing? Like, what is the startup world? What is the tech space? Like, where can I use skills that I have and apply them? And Strava was growing a lot and didn't really have a recruiting team. So I started by just like helping schedule interviews, became a recruiting coordinator, and would welcome folks into the office for interviews and set up the whole schedule. And it's a tough job, but it's like a really great way to learn about recruiting. And so I learned a lot just by doing. And eventually we were able to hire other folks in recruiting, and I was able to learn from them. And that's how I got into recruiting.
That's awesome. You mentioned your husband. What does he do?
He is a director of product management at Pandora, the music app. So he is also kind of in similar space, and now does that remotely with some travel. But yeah, he was able to get into that when we moved to the Bay Area.
Okay, so you're at Strava. Take us to your next role. Where'd you go then?
Yeah, so let's think about this. I was at Strava for quite a while by like um, startup or tech world standards. So a little over 4 years, I think. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and it was an awesome experience to just like grow the team there and be a part of that. And then I went to another startup called Minted, where it's an e-commerce company that basically takes like artist submissions and makes them into prints or cards. You've probably received a wedding invite or holiday card from them.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And so I was there for a couple years, and then went to another startup after about, yeah, probably just about 2 years. Joined Career Karma, which helps people upskill and get better paying jobs, mainly in software engineering, but also like other skills. And that's where I was at until SRAM Hammerhead. So I would have to say, like, recruiting the past 5 years has been a little bit of a rocky road with all of the like downsizing of companies and layoffs happening. Um, it's been a challenging space to be in, but I have learned
Yeah.
a lot about that, and it's good to be at SRAM now, where there's some stability of like a larger company, and the startup world it's a tough space to be in right now.
Oh yeah. Well, especially, I mean, it's a tough world to be in, right? Where
Mhm.
many companies are being challenged with remote employment versus location
Mhm.
based, and that dynamic, there's a lot of tension, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's a tough one.
Caitlin, from Strava, from your time at Strava until now, were you always racing at sort of a category one or pro level, or when did that begin?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that really began like my entry back into biking and bike racing really happened while I was at Strava. So I was running a lot at the time because it was convenient. But as somebody who's had so many knee surgeries, running is not a great path.
Yeah.
So I kind of got back on the bike because of that and looking for another option, really just for exercise, because that was something that had always been a part of my life and really helped me like manage stress at work and just be in a good space in my life. And so I got back on the bike and was using Strava and was like, oh, like actually pretty like fast, I guess. I don't know. Like Strava, I know for better, for worse, has positives and negatives, but for me, it did like ignite a little bit of competitiveness that I have always had. And a lot of, at the time, cyclocross was really popular in the Bay Area. There was
Yeah.
a great racing series, or a few great racing series, and a lot of high level athletes based there. And so I borrowed a bike from Elle Anderson, who was also working at Strava and also a former SRAM athlete, and like went to a race with her, and I was immediately hooked. I like did I think I wanted to do the C race, and she was like, no, like you know how to ride a bike, you're fit, like do the B race. So I did the B race and I won by a lot. And so
Nice.
I did like the next race I jumped into the A's, which is like not a lot of the series there were USAC sanctioned, but it's essentially a Cat 1 elite race. And so jumped into the A races and pretty quickly like worked my way up to the front of the race. And I just found that like my background in skiing and then like having running fitness and having the bike handling skills from when I was younger, like that combination all came together really well for cyclocross. And I loved it.
What are some of your career highlights in bike racing?
Yeah. I would say a big one for me was getting third place at Pan American Championships in 2021. It was one of those days where like everything just came together, and I did have a crash early in the race, so I was actually a little bit behind in chasing, but I chased back up to the front of the race and then was battling with the fourth place girl and just kind of made like the perfect pass at the end of the race. And you don't like, for me, I've had a relatively short bike racing career, so I don't
Yeah.
have a lot of those moments. So that's one that's really memorable to me.
You know, you mentioned some of your challenges in skiing with, your knees and such. Have you had any cycling challenges, either physically or otherwise?
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest one that comes to mind is when I was at Cyclocross Nationals, which were actually in Reno in 2018. And it was the first year that I had a coach and I had trained really hard for nationals. I think it was my second nationals, and my training went super well. Like it was my first time really buckling down and setting aside like a hard training block for a big event like that. And I was still racing for a local team at the time. I was still kind of relatively unknown. I didn't have a lot of big sponsors, and I just wanted to show up and do my best. And so I signed up. I was working for Strava at the time. I signed up for the industry race as kind of a warm up to the pro race, and was out front in that race, leading the race. It was going well, and it was at 8 o'clock in the morning, so the grass was frosty, and I just had a really innocent kind of wipeout in a corner. But I felt a little something in my knee, and with my history of knee injuries, that's was a little bit alarming. And I wasn't able to finish the race because I broke a spoke, and I didn't have a pit bike at the time. I had one borrowed for the next day, so in the elite race, like there was something there if I really needed it, but luckily the conditions were dry. So anyway, dropped out of the race. My knee really hurt, but I didn't tell anyone and pretended like everything was fine because
Of
there
course.
was no way I was going to miss the big race the next day.
Yeah.
And so despite the pain, I kind of lined up the next day and had an awesome race, finished 10th, and like that was huge for me at the time. Yeah, pretty quickly after the race, my knee was swelling up and I was in a lot of pain, and I realized that like this was probably something I was going to have to go to the doctor for. So so I went to the doctor after, and realized that my knee was in a lot worse shape than I had ever imagined. So in that little slide out crash, I had torn some meniscus. So I had raced nationals with torn meniscus, but there were bigger issues, unfortunately. Like my ACL was not really intact from the previous injuries, and so I was facing a really big setback in terms of really big knee surgery, which was tough to swallow because I had just kind of felt like I'd gotten to this new level in cycling, and like it was that time when I had some UCI points and was feeling like, okay, like let's go. I'm really excited. I love cyclocross, and like I could be competitive in the pro field. And then I had this major setback and had to have a huge knee surgery, which took a year to recover from, and then really like almost 2 years before I got back to the fitness and
Wow.
like full strength that I was at in cyclocross, because of like the kind of jumping on and off the bike and those things that are hard on your knee. So that was definitely one of the biggest challenges I've faced in my time in cycling.
I guess I got to ask, how are your knees now?
Yeah, that surgery was a good investment. It has helped me, despite taking a really long time to recover from. It has ultimately helped me and allowed me to be really comfortable on the bike again, and also even a little bit in running. But I would say in the longer term, I will be facing some issues as I get older with just like a lack of meniscus and things like that that I'll be dealing with down the road. But for now, they're pretty good, and I'm trying to enjoy cycling and the sports that I'm doing, but also be kind to my body and my knees as well.
Caitlin, what's your off the bike fitness routine look like these days?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm trying really hard to commit to more of a strength routine. But to be totally honest, like it's hard. I'm busy with work, and that's one of the things that gets left to the wayside. So
Yeah.
I did a session yesterday, and I'm hoping to continue on that streak. I do run like short runs once or twice a week to mix it up. And I also, in the winter, include a lot of cross country skiing for fitness as well, just to have some time away from the bike and enjoy something else outside.
I know from talking to you that you have a dog. Do you ever exercise outdoors with your dog?
Yes. So my dog Cece loves the snow. She's a lab mix and she's black, so summers are tough for her. She can't make it very far mountain biking. So we mostly stick to cross-country skiing or trail running. She absolutely loves those things.
Those dogs are amazing. They will just lay in the snow forever, won't they?
It's awesome. Yeah, she loves it.
Caitlin, let's talk a little bit about recruiting at SRAM. You know, you're not our traditional guest, but I love having you on the show. I'd be curious if you could speak for a little bit about what are some of the things that we look for in recruiting new talent? What's some advice that you could give someone that's listening to the show that's like, hey, I like their brand, I like their brands, they seem like a cool company. How do I get in? What could you share with some listeners that are interested in us?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing that I see and I try to share with folks is like use your do your best to leverage your networks because the cycling community is small. And think about whether you're at an event, a bike race, or any more formal like career networking event, anything like that. Like, think about how to use your network to get connected because I think that's especially helpful in terms of getting a foot in the door for an interview. Like, that's how I got my first job in recruiting, and also I think just helps a lot. That's also how I got connected with SRAM ultimately and got a foot in the door here. So I think that's a big one, and it's also like make sure that you never know who is working in the industry or who might be connected with who. So always be kind and gracious in those environments because I think those impressions kind of go a long way. And that's something that I think is important. Like it's a small community and network, and you want to make sure that you have a really positive presence. And I think that's something that SRAM looks for as well when they're looking at candidates.
If you're lucky enough to get your foot in the door at a company, regardless of who it is, how important is the follow-up?
Yeah, I think it's extremely important. And kind of knowing how to politely follow up and when and what that looks like, I think is a bit of a skill. But I think with everything that everyone has on their plate and how busy everyone is, it's super important to politely follow up and follow through. And it also shows that you're really genuinely interested and that you really want what you're going after.
Let's talk about some of the fun projects and partners that you work with in the community. You know, I know you're involved, at least early on, you were involved with the Little Bellas, but you also do some really cool things in the cyclocross world and also sort of winter sport world. Let's start with Little Bellas, though. They obviously had a huge influence on you early on. Could you see yourself, you know, continuing to work with them? Do you still work with them? And what kind of work do you do with them?
Yeah. Yeah. So I started as a mentor and was part of the first program in Marin. So it was really cool to see that chapter get started and be a part of that. And I was a mentor for 2 summers there when I was living in the Bay Area. And it was a time when I was really getting into bike racing and like starting to see success in that. And I was super busy with work and racing and all the things, but like the Sunday afternoons with the Little Bellas was like one of the best parts of my week every week all summer. So I really looked forward to that. And so I definitely would love to become a mentor again when I move back to Vermont. I think that'll be a good starting point. Again, there's a bunch of different programs already going in Vermont, so I'll be excited to rejoin and get involved again there.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit more about what a mentor is or what they do in
Yeah.
this context.
Yeah. So in this context, it's really about showing up and being positive and setting this environment of positivity for these young girls who are coming to ride with you on mountain bikes. And it's not about competition or training. It's not even necessarily that much about skills, although they have a really fun way of working skills work into games. So the cool thing about Little Bellas is that they have a curriculum written, and it's really set up so that mentors can come in and use the curriculum that already exists across chapters. And when we were doing this, Leah and her sister Sabra came out and set us up and got us all ready since it was the first time and it was starting a new chapter. So they set us up well, and then we were able to show up and just be really supportive and come prepared knowing the activities and games. But having that basis already set up was a really nice platform for us so we could just create a really inclusive environment where the girls felt safe and had a lot of fun riding mountain bikes.
I love that organization.
Yeah.
Caitlin, tell us about the Eurocross Academy camps.
Yeah, so for the past, I've done the past 2 summers coaching at Eurocross Academy. They're run by Jeff Proctor, who's been really involved for a long time in the cyclocross community and helping develop junior riders and provide development opportunities. I think just like in addition to what's provided by USA Cycling, since it's a small sport and there's just not a lot of development opportunities for young riders. So he's created these really cool camps to help support young riders, and they're really in preparation for hopefully bringing riders to Europe to experience racing cyclocross at the highest level. So they definitely are for experienced riders who've done some cyclocross racing and want to hone in on their skills and learn from professional coaches. They're also really hard camps. So like they're super rigorous. I think it's just 5 days, but you have like 3 sessions a day. So as an athlete coach, you get to be a part of that and experience it. And it is definitely hard work. You go for a run every morning at 6 and do a morning warm up. And then you have breakfast, and then you're doing like skills sessions, which are not easy in themselves. And then you have lunch, and then you have an afternoon endurance session, and there's like classroom time built in. And a lot of this is based on things that Jeff learned about the way that Europeans do cyclocross training and experience that he's gotten in Belgium and the Netherlands from the heart of the sport. So really cool program that he runs. And I got looped in because he started the Vermont session 2 summers ago, and it's actually in the town that I grew up in, so that was super convenient. And I was able to bring some local knowledge of like what roads we should ride on and some cool areas to check out.
Caitlin, in our discussions, you also shared another really cool organization that you're involved with, which is Protect Our Winters. Can you share a little bit more with the audience about that?
Yeah, definitely. So I joined Protect Our Winters. They started these athlete alliances, and I joined the Bike Alliance. Barry Wicks, who I know is the head of kind of the Bike Alliance, so he recruited me to join that. They were specifically looking for folks in Nevada because Protect Our Winters is all about helping athletes use their platform and become advocates and kind of become this like collective, using the platform as a collective source for advocacy and taking action against the climate crisis. So it's been really cool to learn about different ways to get involved and also learn that it's possible to be an imperfect advocate. I think I was resistant to getting involved prior because there is definitely some hypocrisy in being an athlete who like travels across the country for an hour-long race and who flies to Europe and all of these things. But it's been really cool to think about how we can use our platforms and get together as athletes. And also, like, they have a creative alliance and a climate scientist alliance, and just kind of collectively take action. So getting more involved politically, and it's nonpartisan work. So on the political side, really trying to get connected with local politicians and help get bills passed that benefit both sides. And that's something it's really new to me and like has been a great learning opportunity.
What's your one big goal for racing for the year?
I've been thinking a lot about that since it's kind of still off season post cyclocross and pre mountain bike gravel. Honestly, I am trying to move away a little bit from focusing on result goals this year. The past few years, I've really focused a lot on the performance aspect and have had a great experience like UCI racing and cyclocross and chasing some big goals. And that's been really fulfilling in a lot of ways. But I also, reflecting on it and looking forward, I really want to get back to enjoying racing in kind of a more pure sense of like going back a little bit to before I got into all of that. And I just was so happy to be out on my bike, and I didn't know about or care about all of those like big results or all the little things that go into the performance, like the small gear choices and all of that. And for sure that's still an aspect of what I do, but I'm really excited to like go on my first bike packing trip this summer. I'm excited to do a bit more mountain biking and mountain bike racing as well and build that into my schedule. So I'm really trying to get back to making sure I am really loving my time on the bike and being thoughtful about that and actually not getting too caught up in the results.
If you had to choose one category or discipline, cyclocross, gravel, or mountain bike, just one, what would you choose?
That's a tough one. I can narrow it down with saying like most of the gravel races are a bit long for my preference, to be honest. So that's something that I struggle with in gravel. I really love some of the shorter events, but as a lot of events become longer and longer, that's a challenge for me. Mountain biking is something that I'll always love, but I think in terms of racing, the atmosphere with cyclocross racing and the community around it and all of that has been my best experience so far.
Caitlin, we just have one last section. It's our psych profile. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready for it.
All right. Pancakes or waffles?
Waffles. Anybody who knows me knows that I love waffles.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Tacos or burritos?
Burritos.
Spicy or mild?
Medium?
Sure. Cold weather or hot weather?
Probably cold weather.
Rain or snow?
Snow, definitely snow.
Mountains or the beach?
Definitely mountains.
Cities or suburbs?
Definitely suburbs. Tried living in a city. It's not for me.
Cars or trucks?
Um, Cars. I'm not a big car truck person, to be honest.
Yeah, or van. I guess I could add
Yeah,
vans to
van
that.
would be a good.
Pavement or dirt?
Definitely dirt.
Gloves or gloveless?
Always gloves.
Got to protect the hands. Clipped in or flat pedals?
Clipped in. I learned how to mountain bike clipped in, basically, I think. So it's hard to go back.
Low pressure or high pressure in your tires?
Low pressure in tubulars for cyclocross, there's nothing like it. But for everything else, I tend to run a little high because I just hate flatting and like dealing with that when I'm out on a ride or in a race. So yeah.
I should add tubes or tubeless. So I'm going to add this right now. Tubes or tubeless?
Tubeless, definitely.
Fix it yourself or take it to a mechanic.
Definitely take it to a mechanic. My mechanic skills are really small. It's not something I really enjoy doing, to be honest. So I haven't taken the time to learn much. I can do the very, very basics, but I prefer to leave it to a professional.
And last question, dogs or cats?
Definitely dogs, although I have a few friends with cats that I've warmed up to.
Could you do dogs and cats?
Yeah, Cece has met a few cats that she's gotten along with, so I think it's possible.
Well, Caitlin Bernstein, it has been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story and your tips and tricks and advice along the way.
Thanks so much for having me.
Have an awesome rest of your day.
You too. Bye.